Let's talk about the FBI now, with Director Christopher Wray stepping down from his post next month. He announced that this week. Republicans are falling in line behind Kash Patel, President-elect Trump's pick to lead the Bureau. Patel was back on the Hill yesterday, meeting with Republican lawmakers. Here's what he had to say ahead of a meeting with Senator Ted Cruz of Texas.
All I can say is we've had a wonderful first week on the Hill, meeting with so many great senators, almost 20 of them. It has been a humbling process to receive their advice during the consent and advice process, and I'm looking forward to continuing that during the confirmation process as I learn every day as I go. And I'm thrilled to be President Trump's nominee for the director of the FBI. And I'm very excited to see Senator Ted Cruz, who is one of the most brilliant constitutional minds we have. Thank you.
You know, Jonathan Lemire, Kash Patel is viewed by many people as perhaps the most controversial of all President-elect Trump's choices here, and yet he seems to be publicly, anyway, getting the most broad support from Republicans. It seems, at least from the Republican side anyway, that he would breeze through if he could get all those votes there from the Republicans who've come out and spoken and supported his choice. What do you make of this dynamic? This is a guy, of course, who's called for the jailing of members of the press, jailing of opponents of Donald Trump, jailing of people he perceived to be part of the deep state. He had an enemies list at the back of his book. So arguably the most controversial of the choices, and yet drawing widespread support on the Hill the last couple of days.
Yeah, I was talking to a senior Hill aide yesterday who was very blunt. It's like, this pick right here, Kash Patel, more than Pete Hegseth, more than Tulsi Gabbard, maybe even more than Robert F. Kennedy Jr., that this pick, Kash Patel, is not only the most controversial, but the one that could change Americans' lives the most, because of if he's willing to use the tools of power in the FBI, you know, to go after the enemies list, one of which he put in the back of his book. Others are more, he's going to take his cues from Donald Trump, either directly or indirectly. This is someone who's going to use the power of the most important law enforcement body in the world, potentially, on American citizens, pressure campaigns for, and even arrests, as he has threatened lawmakers, journalists, others who he has deemed in opposition to the MAGA movement. And as so many people have said, Kash Patel really has no ideology of his own, per se, but rather simply channels whatever Donald Trump wants. So at least it is striking, though, to Willie's point. We have heard senators, both publicly and privately, express reservations about Pete Hegseth, right? We knew Matt Gaetz that pick was in trouble right away. Some have said, well, Tulsi Gabbard, do we really want her to have the nation's secrets? I think next week the spotlight will turn a little bit to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. But Kash Patel has flown under the radar. And my question to you is, there are some, obviously, Republicans, a number of Republicans, who do care about law and order, who do care about, you know, the norms of government and checking its investigative powers. Are they going to stand up against Kash Patel, who more than anyone, I think, symbolizes what Trump 2.0, retribution, is all about?
I don't think you can underestimate just how strong the anger is against the FBI by even the rank and file Republicans, what they see as the department's excesses over the past 8 years or so, really starting with, you know, Comey and his announcement about Hillary Clinton on the eve of the election was even an overstep, some Republicans feel. So I think that that's why Kash Patel, they see as someone to come in and clean up, and he might, you know, he might upset some apples in the barrel cart, but they're okay with it as long as there's radical reform. And you see that with so many of those nominees. They're willing to accept, like they are with Trump, that things are going to get broken, there could be chaos. But, you know, they feel that they have to address the underlying problems that their constituents are so angry about.
This reminds me that it could be like a 21st century version, an adaptation, an update of Pat Moynihan's 1993 essay on defining deviancy down. So Kash Patel is on the roster to be FBI director. And he's on the roster, he's batting third. Number one, Pete Hegseth. Senators walking around saying he's totally unqualified. We can't have him. We can't put him in charge of the Department of Defense. Then they go to Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard, no, if she's director of national intelligence out of the White House, the French, the British, the Israelis, the Germans, no one will tell us about their intelligence apparatus. They won't deal with us because they don't trust her. Kash Patel. Oh, okay, all right. We'll define deviancy down. And Kash Patel, okay, I'll vote for him to be FBI director, Willie. And it's incredible to watch it and just thinking of what's happened to the United States Senate over the course of the past couple of decades, but especially over the past 10 years. I mean, it used to be the greatest deliberative body in the world, and now apparently for the Republican senators, it's check your conscience at the door.
And remember, those senators' principal objection, they say, to the FBI right now under Christopher Wray is that it has been, quote, weaponized against political opponents. That's their perception. Well, now you have someone in Kash Patel who explicitly is saying his job is to weaponize the FBI to go after the opponents of Donald Trump. So how are Democrats in the Senate handling all of this? Pete Hegseth met for the first time yesterday with a Democratic senator on Capitol Hill. Donald Trump's pick for defense secretary spent the last 2 weeks in Washington talking to Republicans. Yesterday, though, he sat down with Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania. Before the meeting, Senator Fetterman told CNN he's just doing his job, advising consent, and that he'd never heard of Hegseth before Trump picked the former Fox News host and military veteran to lead the Pentagon. Here's what Fetterman had to say after their conversation.
Create space, guys. Create space. Create space.
I'm not really sure that, like I said, there's not really a new thing. We had a conversation, and that's part of the process. And that's the thing. I'm going to listen to what my colleagues on the other side continue to say and how they evaluate.
Guys, hey guys, create space. Create space. He's voting. Are you considering voting for him?
Yeah. So it's just like it's a conversation.
Tough to hear, though, there, Caddy K, but Senator Fetterman basically saying this is not news. This is our job. We bring them in. We have a meeting. It doesn't mean I'm voting for the guy, but I'm going to give him a fair hearing like I would anyone else. What do you make, though, just more broadly? That's one Democrat. There'll be others. Senator Fetterman keeping an open mind. Broadly about the process that we're talking about here, which is that Republicans, though they were able to run off Matt Gaetz, it appears they're having a little more trouble, at least for the moment. There's still hearings to come, and there'll be much more in this process, finding their conscience about some of these picks.
Well, briefly on Fetterman, it shouldn't be news. I mean, if the system was working perfectly, then senators from both sides would meet the candidate of any president. But it is news, of course, because he is the only Democrat who has met with these proposed candidates from Donald Trump. So that in and of itself, he knows this. It makes it news. He also knows he's up for re-election in the election cycle in which Donald Trump will have just finished his first term in office and in a state in which Donald Trump has just won. So there may be a whole load of motives going on there. You're right that it looks for the moment like this week, at the end of this week, very different from the end of last week, Donald Trump's nomination picks seem to be in a stronger position than they were this time last week. We were surprised that Pete Hegseth made it through the weekend. I've been told there are lots of different machinations going on. John Thune, Senator John Thune, the incoming Senate Majority Leader, is having kind of discussions about how he can play kind of checkers with the senators, give some of them the opportunity to say no to one pick, but not have any of them have to say no to more than one pick. But at the moment, until this process starts, I mean, I think we have to slightly ignore this process at the moment because some of the signals we're getting as we're going around the corridor being followed by reporters is different from what will happen when we actually have the hearings. With Trump, you always have to kind of go with what is happening, not with what is being said. And once we sit down and these hearings start taking place, that could be the moment at which you start to see some of these senators say, OK, we are going to find ways that some of us on some of these picks are able to get enough cover to vote no occasionally. And occasionally may be only once.
And at the end of the day, will they vote against Donald Trump? Will they cross him? Historically, the answer has been no. We'll see. Ryan.